music hold ended.
Hello, I'm Neil Wertheimer, and I want to welcome you to this important discussion about inflation and its impact to your retirement security. Before we begin, if you would like to hear this telephone town hall in Spanish, press *0 on your telephone keypad now.
Si usted desea escuchar en español, presione asterisco y 0 en su teléfono ahora.
AARP, a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization with a membership, has been working to promote the health and well-being of older Americans for more than 60 years. Since that fateful month of March 2020, when the COVID pandemic officially began, all our lives have been changed in some way, be it our health, our work, our levels of anxiety, our connections to others, or simply how we live day to day. More recently, the impact has been increasingly financial, particularly for older Americans. And then came the inflation. Over the past year or so, we have faced some of the highest rates of inflation in decades, with groceries, gas prices, utility costs, and most everything else we spend on seeing double-digit increases. At the same time, many of our retirement accounts and other investments took a big dive, and that's made us all worried. How do we cope with surging costs in the short term and plan for the long term? Many of us are exploring new ways to save and manage expenses. Today, we'll hear from an impressive panel of experts about these issues and more. We'll also get an update from Capitol Hill on legislation affecting older Americans. If you've participated in one of our teletown halls, you know this is similar to a radio talk show, and you have the opportunity to ask questions live. For those of you joining us on the phone, if you would like to ask a question about inflation and the impact to your retirement security, press *3 on your telephone to be connected with an AARP staff member who will note your name and question and place you in a queue to ask the question live. If you're joining on Facebook or YouTube, you can post your questions in the comments. Hello, I'm Neil Wertheimer, Deputy Editor for AARP Publications, and for 6 consecutive years, co-editor of the 99 Great Ways to Save edition of the AARP Bulletin. I want to welcome you to this important discussion about inflation and the impact to your retirement security. We are talking with experts and taking your questions live. To ask questions, please press *3, and if you're joining on Facebook or YouTube, you can post your question in the comments. We will also be joined by my AARP colleague, Gil Cabrera, who will help facilitate your calls today. This event is being recorded, and you can access the recording at aarp.org/coronavirus, 24 hours after we wrap up. Again, to ask your question, please press *3 at any time on your telephone keypad to be connected with AARP staff, or if you're joining us on Facebook or YouTube, place your question in the comments. Now, I'd like to welcome our guests. Suze Orman is a renowned personal finance expert and New York Times best-selling author. She currently has more than 25 million personal finance books in circulation, including the recently published bestseller, The Ultimate Retirement Guide for 50+. She is the host of the popular podcast, Suze Orman's Women and Money, and she is co-founder of Secure Save, a tool to help people save for life's emergencies. Joanne Jenkins has led AARP, the nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that empowers retired people to choose how they live as they age, since 2014 is our CEO. AARP leads efforts to preserve Social Security and promote retirement savings to help everyone achieve lifetime financial security. Welcome to you both. Just a reminder, to ask your question, please press *3 on your telephone keypad, or you can drop it in the comments section on Facebook or YouTube. Suze, let's dive right in.
Let's do it, Neil.
It's so nice to be with you, Suze. Everything costs more right now. We all know that. Do you see any good news on the horizon for people whose budget is being erased by inflation?
I have to tell you, I do. You know, when we have such high inflation, what you're seeing the feds do now is they are raising the Fed funds rate, which raises interest rates for everybody. So, because inflation is so high, first of all of you are going to notice next year your Social Security check is going to increase by probably 8 or 9%, right around there. So you will be getting more money because of inflation. At the same time, because interest rates are increasing, for those of you who want to keep your money safe and sound, you're afraid of the stock market. Finally, you can get a decent interest rate now in certificates of deposit. You can start getting a better interest rate than you were getting a year ago in savings accounts. And the treasuries right now are offering 3.5%, 4%. So there's a way for you to get more income on money that you may have that then helps you pay for the things that are costing you more. That's the good news, if there's any good news at all.
Suze, right now there's these inflation-protected savings bonds, these Series I bonds, and their rates are incredible. Not many people know about them. What are they, and do you recommend them?
Yeah, for the past year or so now, because inflation really started, Neil, over a year ago, the government issues something called a Series I bond, and I stands for inflation. And you can purchase them with as little as $25 or up to a maximum of $10,000 per person. And currently, they are giving you a 9.62% interest rate. Now, that interest rate is really for 6 months. So in actuality, you're getting 4.81% because the interest resets every May 1st and November 1st. But I am telling everybody to go to treasurydirect.gov because these are, again, guaranteed by the authority of the United States government. They're state tax-free, and you do not pay any income taxes on it while your money's in there. Where today can one get an interest rate like I just said? The catch is, however, you have to leave your money in there for at least 1 year. You cannot touch it. And years 2 through 5, if you withdraw any amount of money, there's a 3-month interest penalty. But just very quickly, if you were to get and go there and do it right now, for the next 6 months, you would get 4.81%, really half of 9.62 because it's only for 6 months. And let's say November 1st, they come out with a new rate of 7%. So after your 6 months is up, for the next 6 months, you would get 3.5%. And even if you came out after 1 year with a 3-month interest penalty, you would get 6.50%, right around there. Where else are you going to get that? So it's something that every single person should check out, and you should all do it before November 1st, when interest rates will absolutely change again.
It's a stunningly good return on your investment given how volatile the stocks are. So thanks for that. And now, Joanne, let's turn to you. What has AARP been hearing from members? How do older adults feel about the economy right now?
You know, Neil, I hear daily from our members about the questions and confusion you're facing because of the impact of COVID and inflation on your personal and your financial lives. You know, the pandemic has financially impacted people very differently. But right now, everyone is feeling the impact of inflation and supply chain issues. We're paying more for our groceries, and this summer we saw the highest gas prices all across the U.S. AARP recently fielded a financial trend survey of adults ages 30 plus and found that 78% are worried about the prices rising faster than their income. And this includes 77% of adults who are over the age of 50. And nearly half have cut back on basic expenses like groceries, personal care, and transportation in the last 12 months due to inflation. So for many, the pandemic has also altered retirement plans and opportunities. Some needed to dip into their savings to cover a gap in employment, while others decided to retire earlier than they had planned to. And now that the prices are rising and the stock market is lower, we're hearing from older adults who are delaying their retirement. An AARP survey from May shows that 42% of adults aged 50 and older either have returned to work in retirement for financial reasons or expect to go back to work in retirement for financial reasons. And like many other areas, older women are especially concerned about the economy. Our research shows a significant majority of the women aged 50 and older are deeply concerned about having enough money to keep up with the rising prices. And, this is also an election year, and we've been talking with older voters about what issues matter most to them. Again and again, they tell us the pocketbook issues are at the top of their concern list. They're worried about whether their income can keep up with rising costs. Voters 50 and older are one of the largest and most reliable voting blocs, and the candidates would be wise to keep their concerns in the minds as we get closer and closer to Election Day.
Suze, as Joanne just shared, Americans are worried. We're repeatedly told to follow a plan, but the way that we spend and save is tied so much to our emotions. And right now, older adults are anxious about outliving their savings, and they're worried about stock market volatility. Many are reevaluating their plans. What are the risks of making changes right now?
Well, it depends where you are within this stage of retirement. People who are 50, obviously, many of you are not retired yet. So many of you are still working and you're still contributing to your retirement plans, whether it be a Roth IRA, an IRA, or an employer-sponsored plan. And you're seeing the market go down. And normally you just put in every month. Do not change that plan. As the markets go down, your dollars that you're putting in buy more shares. Eventually, whether it's a year, 2, 3 from now, the markets will return up, and that will then be there for you when you retire. So one of the biggest mistakes you can make if you still are contributing to a retirement plan and you are at least 5 or 10 years from retiring, do not change your plan. Do not stop investing. I personally would tell you, you are far better off investing in a Roth retirement plan, bar none, than a traditional retirement plan that is pre-tax for many, many reasons, especially later on in life when you do retire. For those of you who are already retired, you have money possibly in the stock market, and you're afraid because your income isn't keeping up with what you need. I would ask you to look at everything you are invested in, because as these markets have gone down, are you invested in stocks, for instance, that are paying you a good dividend to give you some extra money that comes into you? Or are you invested in mutual funds that aren't paying you dividends or stocks that aren't paying you dividends? So in that chance, Neil, what I would say, look at what you have and possibly change your plan to get your money to generate more income for you. Even if you're in a retirement plan, at this point, there's nothing wrong with looking at bonds within your retirement plan to generate more income. And if done correctly, eventually when interest rates go back down, the value of those bonds will go up. A year or two ago, I would have said, stay away from bonds, get out of bonds, get out of bonds. Now you might want to look at bonds as an investment that gives you income as well as safety.
Suze, very quickly, you mentioned Roth IRAs, and we write about them a lot in the bulletin, but a lot of people don't know what they are. Can you quickly define them and let people understand their benefits?
Yeah, a Roth retirement account, whether it be a Roth 401k, 403b, or TSP, if it's with your employer, or a Roth IRA that you do on your own, is simply a retirement account that you fund with money you have already paid taxes on. Because you've already paid taxes on it, it stays in there and it grows and grows and grows. And later on in life, when you go to take money out, it is totally tax-free to you. The good thing about a Roth IRA is that any money that you originally put in, you can withdraw at any time without taxes or penalties, regardless of how long the money has been in there and regardless of your age. So at times like this, if you had money that you put into a Roth IRA year after year after year that you yourself contributed, and you needed to withdraw $2,000 or $3,000, you could do so without taxes or penalties because it's coming from the money that you put in. If you had a traditional retirement account, meaning you fund it with pre-tax dollars, so you get a tax write-off, you cannot touch that money prior to the age of 59 and a half in most circumstances. Or if you do touch it, there will be not only a 10% penalty, you'll pay ordinary income taxes on it as well. Hands down, for many reasons, Roth retirement accounts are far better because later on in life, when you do take money out of a Roth retirement account, it does not account against income for Social Security and Medicare B premiums. Big deal, everybody. Think about it.
Thank you, Suze. I'm glad you explained it. It's time now to address your questions with Suze Orman and Joanne Jenkins. Please, again, press *3 at any time on your telephone keypad to be connected with AARP staff to share your question. And if you would like to listen in Spanish, press *0 on your telephone keypad now.
Si usted desea escuchar en español, presione *y 0 en su teléfono ahora.
I'd now like to bring in my AARP colleague, Gil Cabrera, to help facilitate your calls. Welcome, Gil.
Thanks, Neil. I'm very happy to be here for this very important conversation.
So, Gil, let's take our first question.
Absolutely, Neil. Our first question comes from Michigan. Sherry is with us live.
Hi, Sherry in Michigan. Go ahead. Ask your question, please.
Hi. Yes, thank you for taking my question. I'm 72 years old and am retired. And I have a 401k that's been losing money with what the stock market's been doing. And I'm just, I keep, they say stay in there. If you pull out, you're locking in your losses. And every time I keep thinking, well, should I be moving some of this into a fixed rate CD since the rates are up? But then all of a sudden the market will pop up and I'll make a nice chunk of change again. And I'm like, okay, it would take you 10 years to make that kind of money. So I'm kind of confused on what to do. And I keep wondering if the closer we get to the midterm election, if that will be a plus or can I expect that to make it even worse?
Suze, I think that's one for you to answer.
All right. So, Sherry, there's no way to know will the election help the markets, will it not? What will continue to hurt the market is as long as inflation is rampant, inflation hurts the market. And as long as inflation is high, the feds will continue to raise interest rates. The more they raise interest rates, the more it hurts the stock market overall. The more it helps, however, treasuries, CDs, and savings accounts. The goal of money, Sherry, is for you to be secure. And hope is not a financial plan. So if you are feeling insecure, the truth of the matter is you might want to look at what you own and you might want to say, you know what? This money I want to keep safe and sound because you are also 72 years of age, which means by April 1st of next year, you have to start taking required minimum distributions. And so do you want to take money from distributions of stocks that are continuing to go down? So I do not think it is a bad idea to take some of your money, if 100% of it is in equities at this point in time, I don't think it is a bad idea to take some and change that into bonds or certificates of deposit, and that's where you will get your required minimum distributions from.
Susie, what do you think is a good ratio for someone around age 70 who's relying on their retirement income or their investments between the stock market and the bond market? Is it 60-40?
Well, it depends on their individual situation. I know, Neil, that a lot of times people say at this age you should have this much in bonds, this much in stocks. But the truth of the matter is, on my podcast a year and a half ago, I had everybody out of bonds. And I had everybody out of bonds, regardless of age, because as interest rates go up, the value of bonds go down, especially bond funds. So more than even allocating according to your age, I would tell you to allocate according to what's happening in the economy to take advantage of it. I personally believe, this is my personal opinion, it's going to be a rough year or two for the stock market. I just believe that. So I think people should just know what they can afford to lose and what they can't.
Gil, can we bring in another caller and get another question?
Absolutely, Neil. We have Mike from Indiana with us next.
Hi, Mike. I'm glad you called in. Thank you for doing so. Can you ask your question? We'd like to hear it.
Yes, sir. My situation is that because of high medical bills, we basically lost all but $100,000 of our retirement before I hit 65. My wife has Parkinson's dementia. I am her caregiver. Our house and car are free. They're fully paid for. We have no credit card debt. We have no other debt. And I need to increase my income stream, but I have to stay at home to take care of my wife, and I just don't know what to do.
So I'm going to ask to split this. Joanne, you want to talk a little bit just about the impact of medical costs on older folks, and then we'll ask Susie for any advice that she has.
Well, absolutely. We know that medical costs is one of the biggest issues that particularly older Americans are facing if, like in your case, your wife's illness really devastates your financial resilience with your personal finances. We've been on this road to try to get the Congress to bring forth some relief in terms of the high cost of medical expenses and looking at, out-of-pocket costs, for older people to $2,000 a year for those on Medicare. But, we just know that we have got to bring some relief to the tens of millions of people all across this country, who but for a severe illness like this would have been financially taken care of. And so we certainly know how important it is for us to be able to manage some money that we have wisely. So I'll turn that over to Susie.
Yeah, Mike, first of all, my heart goes out to you. And are you healthy, Mike? I don't know if he's still on, so I'll just answer then. It's in situations like this, one of the things that you might consider, and again, I don't know your situation, is I don't know how much equity you actually have in your home. I don't know if it makes sense at this point in time for you to possibly look into selling the home that you have and maybe taking money and going into an assisted living facility with your wife so that you could also have some relief, because if something happens to you, Mike, who takes care of your wife? So there needs to be another person there that can also help. So is that you go out and you go back to work and you bring in somebody possibly for a few dollars an hour, whatever that may be, to take care of her while you're working? It is not easy. And I do not have the solution for you without being able to sit down and look at everything that you have. But with real estate still being really high in terms of people are still getting prices that they want to get, and I'm not sure that's going to continue, these are all alternatives for you to look at. Also, I just have to say this, Mike. I don't know if you have children or if you have other family members, but sometimes parents feel like they need to do it all on their own. There's nothing wrong with asking your children for help. There comes a time when the children need to bone up and help their parents, like their parents helped their children all those years. So I truly believe in making finances a family affair if you can, and involve everybody to help solve this situation.
Thank you. Thank you both. Gil, we would like to bring in one more folk. Can you invite someone in with a question?
Absolutely, happy to. We have Judith from Indiana for you, Neil.
Hello, Judith. Thank you for joining us. What's on your mind?
Well, my question is about the increase in rent that's occurred since the start of the pandemic. And I was wanting to know if that cost will ever go down.
What do you think, Suze?
I don't think it will go down, I'm so sorry to say, unless some legislation is passed that says people have to stop gouging all of you. And that's exactly what's happening. I'm so sorry to say, Judith. The reason I don't think it will go down is that inventory of homes are still very low. And many of the people who were, and companies that were building homes have stopped building them for some reason. They have cut back on that, which makes inventory stay low, which makes it that those people who own homes and rent them out, and you have no choice, they can charge you what they want unless it's rent controlled. And there you go. So it's difficult. I just think it's atrocious what rents are today. And in reality, there's absolutely no reason that they should be that high. So Judith, either you have to find another place, get roommates, believe it or not, find out other things that possibly you can do. Can you move to a different neighborhood where rents aren't quite so high? It's very difficult, and I wish I had a magic wand to solve that for you, but I'm sorry, I don't. But that is the reality of the situation.
So as a reminder to ask your question, please press *3. We're going to take more of your live questions soon. In addition to sharing trustworthy information and hosting events like this, AARP is continuously advocating at all levels of government and fighting on behalf of older Americans. To give a quick update, I want to bring in AARP Executive Vice President and Chief Advocacy and Engagement Officer, Nancy Lamond. Welcome, Nancy.
Happy to be here, Neil.
So I want to start with last month's historic prescription drug reforms that passed the House and Senate and were signed into law. I'm going to ask Joanne to speak more about this in a moment, but I'd be remiss to not offer some real deep congratulations to you on behalf of all of us and to your teams on the passage of the legislation.
Well, thanks so much. Prescription drug pricing reform is a tremendous victory for older Americans that was quite literally years in the making. After decades of calling on Congress to make prescription drugs more affordable, AARP won the fight to allow Medicare to negotiate lower drug prices and other policies that will save seniors money on their medications. Joanne's going to explain the details and why it's so important, but I want to thank everyone who signed our petitions, sent emails, and called members of Congress. Many of you are on this call, and you powered this success. We couldn't have done it without you.
So what are some other ways AARP is fighting to help older Americans, especially those still in the workplace?
Well, we know that these days it's harder than ever to make ends meet. You all have been talking about it on this call. So first and foremost, AARP is fighting to protect Social Security and Medicare, which are the foundation of a secure retirement. We're advocating for state work and save programs that provide an easy way for workers to save for retirement. We're also advocating to support family caregivers who work, pushing for legislation to allow them to take time off to care for a loved one without fear of losing their pay or their jobs. And we're fighting to make sure that paid sick leave is available to workers all the time, not just during public health emergencies.
So, Nancy, we are entering election season. What is AARP's focus heading into the November election?
First, it's important to remember what we don't do. AARP doesn't endorse candidates, nor do we give money to candidates. That said, we're working hard to make sure that all candidates pay attention to older Americans and address the issues that are important to them. As they have been in all recent elections, we fully expect voters age 50 and older to make up the majority of the electorate in November. We're also making sure our members and broader constituency know how, where, and when to vote. A lot of states have changed their voting laws since the last election, so we're doing a lot of education and outreach to explain what's different and what stays the same. In addition to election pages on AARP.org, this month's issue of the AARP Bulletin, as you well know, Neil, details how you can vote in your state.
Yeah, we put out 53 voter guides for each state, so I hope you all use them, and I hope it's helpful. AARP has done a lot of pre-election polling in battleground states and national surveys of women voters age 50 and up. What can you tell us about the findings?
Well, in a nutshell, elections are going to be very close in the battleground states, and older voters, especially older women, are going to be critical to the outcome. Our research shows that 1 in 3 likely voters in key states are women age 50 and up, and they are the biggest block of swing voters. When it comes to issues, inflation and the economy are certainly top of mind. But we're also seeing a lot of other issues bubble up, including the division in this country and protecting Social Security and Medicare. It goes without saying that every single vote counts.
Nancy, thank you for being here today. If our listeners want to stay on top of AARP's advocacy news, how can they find the latest updates?
We encourage everyone to go online and search AARP Fighting for You. That will lead you to a daily roundup of all of our latest advocacy news on our work in Congress and across the country. And you can also search AARP Fierce Defender and find a host of updates and money-saving resources.
So thank you, Nancy. And now it's time to address more of your questions with Suze Orman and Joanne Jenkins. Please press *3 at any time on your telephone keypad to be connected with AARP staff. Gil, who do we have on the line?
Well, Neil, there is a question coming us via Facebook social media that I found rather interesting. The question is from Karen Guzman. She says, you provided guidance for those who will retire in 5 to 10 years. What advice do you have for people who may retire in the short term, as in the next 1 to 3 or 5 years?
Suze, you want to take that?
Well, what I was saying when I said 5 to 10 years is that those, if you have time on your side, 5 to 10 years, you can wither this downward market. If, however, you have 1 to 3 years till you retire, you have to look at your retirement account, and you should look at it seriously right now and decide, is there enough money in there right now for me to be able to retire? Because over the next 1 to 3 years, as I said, and again, this is just my personal opinion, I could be 1,000% wrong. I think we're going to see more of a decrease in the stock market than an increase for the next 1 or 2 years. So this is when you look at what you have and you decide what do you want to keep safe and what do you want to keep invested. For those of you who are going to retire in 1 to 3 years, and you happen to own a home that still has a mortgage on it, and you are going to stay in that home, my advice would be for you, rather than to even put more money into the stock market through retirement plans, to take that money, and if you could get your home paid off in full by the time you retire, then you're really sitting pretty, or a lot prettier, because your largest expense is your home mortgage or your rent payment. But there's nothing you can do about the rent payment. But if you could get rid of your home mortgage, I would tell you that's where all my extra money or my investment money, if I had any, that's where it would be going. So you want to get yourself in a position, if you're retiring in 1 to 3 years, where your car loans are paid off, you're out of credit card debt, you don't have a home equity line of credit. You want to make sure that you are as debt free as possible. So if you can, if you have any extra money, it would be going there, in my opinion, rather than anywhere else.
Suze, I want to follow up on that. We often write in the bulletin that I think we sometimes overcomplicate the retirement planning in the sense that what really matters is one equation, which is, do you have enough monthly income to cover all of your costs? Is there a way to really calculate that? I mean, is that what someone who's planning to retire should focus on, is really understanding how much income they're going to have and how much they're going to be spending?
Yes, but the problem though, Neil, is they don't know how much they're going to be spending if inflation is added to that equation. So a lot of times what people do is they look at what they are spending now. Imagine if you did that a year or two ago and inflation was relatively nil, and you had your Social Security, maybe you had a pension check, maybe you had some rent, who knows, coming into you, and you knew that your income covered your expenses, but now your expenses have increased dramatically because of inflation. So if I were you and I was doing that exercise, because that is the correct exercise that one should do, then what I would be doing is, if you know what your expenses are today, just increase them and pretend like they're more expensive in the future, because maybe you need a home health care worker or somebody to take care of you. Or if you lose a spouse, maybe you need to hire somebody now to fix your car or do things like that. Just make sure that your expenses are realistic and increase every year to know how long will your income cover those expenses. But essentially, that is how you would figure it out.
Thank you, Suze. Gail, can we get another question?
Happy to, Neil. We have Al from New Jersey for the panel.
Al, how are you? It's good to have you. Why don't you ask your question? We want to hear it.
My question is this. Will Social Security always be there for us? There was one a politician who wanted to get rid of Social Security. Can he do so?
Joanne, what do you think?
Well, I certainly hope not. We believe Social Security will be there. Obviously, there needs to be changes made to make sure that it is there in perpetuity. But there are a number of legislative bills under consideration that would cut back Social Security in certain forms, in certain ways. AARP is there advocating to make sure that does not happen. Social Security is something that we've all paid into over the course of 40 quarters over our lifetime. It's something that the American people bought into, a system that the government said would be there for us. And we're certainly expecting and will be holding the Congress accountable to make sure Social Security is there not just for us, but for future generations and our grandchildren to come.
I'll add to that we recently did an extensive story about the future of Social Security, and surveys showed that somewhere like 90% of Americans are strongly in favor of the program. And so it truly transcends politics. This is a cornerstone program of American life. And so I think most experts would agree it will continue to carry on. Joanne,
Well, I was just going to say, across the board, AARP members, liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat, rural, city, everyone supports Social Security. And so there will be a big fight on Capitol Hill if someone tries to touch Social Security to make sure that it's not there in the future.
Gail, can you bring in another question?
Absolutely. We have from Alabama, Linda joining us, Neil.
Linda from Alabama, thank you so much for participating. What's on your mind?
Thank you for taking my question. My husband is actually retiring tomorrow.
Congratulations.
And, thank you so much. We're really excited. Um, his 401k is with his employer. He is invested in stocks, which has done very well, until now. It's a little rocky. But, I wanted to ask, and I know everyone's situation is different, whether or not to roll it over to another qualified plan. My thoughts are to leave it where it is because, of course, his stocks are down. And I feel like, that we've done the numbers. We can hang in there and wait for the market to come back up. And then at that point, I don't know what we would do. I'd have to think that one when we get to that bridge. But I wanted to get thoughts on that.
So that's a great question, Linda. Susie, I'm going to ask you in two parts of that. One is, should Linda leave it in her current 401k or roll it over? And second, if you're really looking at a longer term time frame, should you leave it in stocks, knowing that in general, through history, stocks pretty much do self-correct after a certain number of years?
Yeah. Linda, the main thing you have to understand is that you are very familiar with the 401k plan where this money happens to be. You feel comfortable there. If you did an IRA rollover with it, you could either, depending if you're in stocks or I don't know what you're invested in, but you could change a lot of things by just rolling whatever you have into an IRA rollover, and you would not suffer any loss whatsoever. So possibly what you own could go to your IRA rollover, or even if you cashed out where you had to do it in cash for some reason, because maybe there are things that you can't roll over. If you did do an IRA rollover, you could buy essentially the same thing. So you would not essentially lose money by doing an IRA rollover. What you would gain is there is more diversification within an IRA rollover than the few mutual funds and the company stock that may be in your 401k. However, with that said, since you feel comfortable there and you might not know how to reinvest all of that money, you should just stay where you are if that's what makes you feel secure. I don't have a problem with that. Right. So if you wanted to get more sophisticated, however, you could obviously do an IRA rollover and then maybe start to convert some money to a Roth IRA and take advantage of the fact that the market is down. So when you convert to a Roth, you don't pay as much taxes. These are all things that you all need to learn about, and again, one way. And that's what I do on the Women in Money podcast. It's mainly for retired people to talk about these kinds of things. So if you feel like you have time and you're not going to need this money and you know that you're invested in good quality stocks, you're diversified, so you have it all over the place to know that it's not just all technology or whatever, and you feel comfortable with that, I don't have a problem with it.
Susie, the second part of that question is that Linda said she may not need this money for several years to come. Are you a little more bullish of staying in the stock market in that situation?
Yeah, that's what I just said, Neil, or maybe I wasn't clear in that if she feels comfortable and she has time on her side and she knows she doesn't need to touch this money and she knows that she is diversified, you don't want this money all in small cap funds or all in, you need total diversification across the board, and you have that, I don't have a problem if you just stay exactly where you are, Linda.
Great. Gil, how about one more question?
Of course, Neil. We have a question from Tammy Hoy through our YouTube chat. She asks, what is crypto, and should we consider that as an investment?
Oh, Susie, I'll definitely give that one to you.
So, Tommy, here's the thing. You can invest in crypto if you want, but only with money that you can afford to lose. I personally wouldn't be touching it if this is money, and I'm not even sure I would call it an investment. I think at many points, this is more like gambling in many ways because legislation may change about it. But if you want to do it, again, make sure you only do it with money that you can afford to lose. And in my opinion, you're going to see crypto, Bitcoin, Ethereum probably go down now before you see it go up again. So if you are going to invest, I wouldn't do it quite yet.
Let's take one more, Gil, please.
Absolutely. We have a question from Joyce in Pennsylvania, Neil.
Okay. Hi, Joyce. So glad that you're listening and have a question for us. Ask away. Joyce, are you there? If not, then let's move on, actually. We'll return to more of your live questions in just a moment. But before we do, let's talk a bit about Social Security some more, and also Medicare. Joanne, those who rely on Social Security will be counting on a cost of living adjustment. We touched on that about half an hour ago. But what are the expectations for the next COLA adjustment?
So AARP has long fought to strengthen Social Security and to protect the hard-earned benefits of millions of Americans and their families. The Social Security COLA, which is expected to be announced on October 13th, will likely be close to 8%, and you heard Suze say 8 to 9%, and will actually start in January. This increase will be crucial for beneficiaries and their families as they try to keep ahead of the rising costs. The resources at aarp.org/Social Security can help you maximize your benefits, answer key questions, and stay up to date on the Social Security COLA. If you're about to retire, you might consider waiting a little longer and working a little longer to maximize your Social Security income. Your Social Security benefits go up every year until you turn age 70. Increasing your monthly Social Security benefit is important. It's a source of income that goes on as long as you live and is adjusted for inflation. The important thing is to continue to save. If you've been saving at a set amount already, I would certainly say you shouldn't stop saving, that's going to be so key to your financial resilience in the future.
If you have a question, a reminder for Suze, Orman, or Joanne Jenkins, please press *3 at any time on your telephone keypad to be connected with AARP staff. Joanne, AARP was recently involved in securing that historic legislation to curb drug prices that Nancy touched on. How does the legislation help older adults save money?
So AARP fought hard for Congress to include multiple provisions to lower the prices of prescription drugs in the Inflation Reduction Act. We know that health care is a major expense for many of our members, and this law that was passed allows Medicare to negotiate the price of certain drugs. Drug companies will be penalized if they raise prices faster than the rate of inflation, and tens of millions in Medicare plans will soon have an annual cap on how much they pay out of pocket for their medications. This is a historic victory, and we could not have done it without the tens of millions of AARP members who emailed and called and wrote letters to Congress to voice your approval of getting this legislation passed. And so, this was 8, 9, 10 years in the making. We will continue to fight to make sure these laws are implemented. And again, I just offer my thanks to the members and also to the advocacy team inside of AARP and also at the state levels for getting this legislation passed.
Where can people turn to for more information if they want to understand more about what passed and its implications?
Well, they certainly can go to AARP.org, and it's front and center on our website. Obviously, we included a major piece in ATM, the bulletin, and there will be additional follow-up items coming out in AARP, the magazine as well. And hopefully, members received my personal letter that I sent to them about 2 weeks ago, really outlining what was included about the battle and thanking them for all of their participation.
Now let's turn back to you, Suze. The housing market is likely entering a downturn after bidding wars, and buyers were sometimes grabbing whatever they could get for the last 2 years. What is the market like today? Is it a good time to buy or sell a home?
Well, it's, a fabulous time to sell a home because prices are still up, Neil. And what's happening is not that the prices are actually going down for real estate. They aren't appreciating as fast as they were appreciating. So I still think if you want to buy a home, and I understand very well if you're going to buy a home, right, that interest rates are going to be about 6.25%, maybe even higher, because that's what they're at right now for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, that I still think you could do a good return on your home, because remember, when you buy a home, you get a tax deduction for interest payments, and eventually, hopefully, you pay it off, so you're not subjected to these exorbitant rent payments that everybody is paying today. But selling a home right now, it's a great time to sell a home, but then if you sell a home, where are you going to live? Are you going to have to buy another home? And if you have to buy another home, are you going to have to finance it? Because if you're going to have to finance it, are you trading a 2.5% mortgage that maybe you're paying now on the home that you currently own for a 6.25% mortgage? And does that even make sense? So it depends. The true answer to your question, Neil, is what is your end goal? Is your end goal to to sell a home and move into another place that you have? Is it to travel? Is it to do whatever? But you have to look at real estate is still high, and it's not going to come down dramatically. You may not, again, in my opinion, see the increases that you were seeing, but I don't think you're going to see your house go under what you bought it for.
Americans continue to grapple with double-digit increases in food and energy as well. Yesterday, there was another big rate hike by the Federal Reserve to slow growth and reduce inflation. Suze, do you think inflation topped out, or is there more to come?
I think there's more to come. I think that we live in a very, very difficult time. We live in a time where we're at war with Ukraine. We live at a time where Russia controls the oil that goes to Europe. We live at a time where anything can happen, and that is reality. Because of that, it's possible, even though we saw gas prices come down at the pumps, who knows, depending what happens with foreign relations, can that continue up? Will we have shipping problems again? Will we not? The one thing we know for sure is that interest rates are going to continue up, because that's exactly what the Fed chairman said yesterday, until inflation comes down to 2 or 3%. The Feds will continue to raise the Fed funds rate. That's why I'm saying to all of you, just wait a little. Look at what's happening with the interest rates of Treasury bonds. You could get 4% right now on a 2-year Treasury note. And that's a great interest rate, given that a year ago, maybe you could get 0.5%. So interest rates are going to continue up. So again, CDs, savings accounts, treasuries may be something that really answer the problems that you're having in terms of not having enough income. But I don't think inflation has topped out. I think inflation will hopefully trickle down, but only time will tell. We'll know shortly.
Suze, I'm going to do a quick follow-up question. What role everyday frugality in the long-term fight for your own finances? And I ask this because even at the bulletin, the media popularly puts out lots of money-saving tips. Is that an important strategy in managing your money in times like these?
It's not just times like this, Neil. It's always an important strategy. You know, I have a saying, you know, that number one, you need to be secure. So when do you buy what you can afford versus what you need, when when you can afford more than what you need? So myself and KT, my spouse, we have always lived below our means, but within our needs. Just because you have money doesn't mean that you should spend it. So we, even to this day, and I'm 71 right now, KT is 70. Just because we have money doesn't mean we spend money. We watch very carefully about every penny that we spend, even at this point in our lives, where obviously you would expect that I'm an extremely wealthy woman. That doesn't mean we're not frugal. So my advice to all of you at this point in time would be live below your means, but within your needs. How do you do that? From this day on, ask yourself the question when you go to buy something, is this a need or is this a want? If it's a want, don't buy it. If it's a need, obviously you have to buy it. And please get as much pleasure out of saving as you do spending. Those would be the three things that I would have you do.
Thank you, Suze. Now it's time to address more of your questions with Suze Orman and Joanne Jenkins. Please press *3 at any time on your telephone keypad to be connected with AARP staff. Gil, who do we have on the line?
Well, Neil, now with us on the line is Jean from Missouri.
Hi, Jean from Missouri. Glad you're with us. What would you like to ask?
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking my questions. I'm 83 and I still work part-time. Have a couple questions primarily for Suze, I think. I always appreciate her comments and listen to her programs from time to time. So, first of all, reverse mortgages. What is her opinion and when should a person consider that? And the other was a question about now that they have expanded the laws concerning traditional IRAs to where folks 70 and older who are required to take minimum distributions can still make contributions up to their earned income or $7,000, whichever's greater. What would be her take on doing that?
Boy, you know, Renee, or Jean, sorry, I would need to know more about you in terms of the second part of your question. In terms of reverse mortgages, honestly, I've never really been a fan of them. And I really was not a fan of them a few years ago when interest rates were so low, because your reverse mortgage payment will be based on obviously your age, as well as the interest rates at the time and what your house is worth. And most people do reverse mortgages because they want to stay in their home and they don't have enough money to stay in their home. And I'm somebody who always advises, if that's true, then let's sell your home, because eventually maybe you can't stay in that home anyway, because maybe it has a second set of stairs in it and you can't walk stairs or whatever it may be. So as you get older, I'm a true advocate in making sure that you're living in a situation where it's all on one floor. You know that you have money for aides to take care of you, or that you are thinking about that. Because one of the largest expenses will be long-term care. And health insurance does not cover long-term care. So I would want you to conserve all the money that you have in your home for you to eventually take care of yourself if you can't stay in that home. But a lot of people love reverse mortgages. But again, they're just a personal thing. They're not my favorite. In terms of, yes, the Secure Act and everything that was passed allow you to continue to make, contributions to your IRA. My question would be, are you contributing to a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA? And if you are contributing to a Roth IRA, where I know you can get that money and whatever, I don't have a problem with that at all if that's what you want to do. But I would rather make sure that you see that you have at least an 8 to 12-month emergency fund, so that when you no longer are working and you need to take money from somewhere, that possibly you're taking it from cash to make up for inflation rather than selling things that happen to be in your retirement account.
Jean, I also want to just say all of our respect and admiration. You're 83 and still working, and clearly you do that because you want to, and you ask a very astute question. It's clear you know about money, and I hope for all of our members to be that way. Gil, I think we have time probably for one more question. Do you have anyone ready to go?
Absolutely. Sandra is joining us from Texas, Neil.
Hi, Sandra. Can you ask your question? We'd love to hear it.
Thank you so much for taking my call. I've really enjoyed listening, but I'm a proactive person. I'm 50, going to be 59, and I believe in not having things act upon me, but acting upon it. In other words, making decisions together as consumers. How can we, together as consumers, bring down inflation and not just wait for it to come down?
That's a provocative and interesting question. Suze?
Well, Sandra, you can do what the Fed chairman wants you to do, and that is they want you to stop spending. If we all stop spending, I know this sounds counterintuitive, they want the economy to slow down. They want people to stop buying things. They want people, believe it or not, to see the unemployment rate go up. If that's what happened, then you would see inflation start to come down, according to them. I'm not sure that's true or not. And I don't quite even understand all of how it works, but that is how they want everybody to act right now. So I'll give you what they want because they're the ones in control of this right now.
Though we are approaching the Christmas and holiday season, and do you have any guidance about how people should give gifts and be spending on the holiday season, given this unique economic moment we're in?
Yeah, I would ask all of you to do what my family does, and that's we make gifts for one another. We do not buy things for one another. And if you happen to be in a situation right now where inflation has taken a bite out of your budget, if you've put all 99 ways to save into effect, that Neil has done for all of you, and you still can't make it, then give yourself a true gift of not feeling guilty because you can't buy something for somebody. Just very quickly, I did studies over the years where I would go up to people with microphones and I would say, what did you get last year for the holidays? And nobody could ever remember, except those people that got love notes, that somebody baked them cookies. So I think this should be a year where you give love to one another, give respect to one another, but not necessarily buy gifts. And if you have the money to buy gifts and to do everything, rather than giving it to people, give it to nonprofits, give it right now to people who are truly, truly suffering out there. That's what I would tell you would make the perfect holiday season.
And I think that's the perfect answer. to bring this to a close. This has been an informative and delightful discussion. Thank you so much for the questions. And thanks to both our guests, Joanne and Suze, for your information, your insight, your openness. And thank you, our AARP members and volunteers and listeners, for participating in this discussion. AARP, a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization with a membership, has been working to promote the health and well-being of older Americans for more than 60 years. All the resources referenced, including a recording of today's Q&A event, can be found at aarp.org/coronavirus on September 23rd. Go there if your question was not addressed, and you will find the latest updates, as well as information created specifically for older adults and family caregivers. We hope you learned something that can help keep you and your loved ones healthy. Please join us on September 29th for another live